Today we will learn what a blank verse is. Now, blank verse was first introduced by Henry Howard, who was popularly known as Earl of Surrey, in 16th century, in his translation of Enid 1540. Blank verse is a literary term that refers to a poetry written in unrhymed but metered lines, almost always iambic pentameter. Both blank verse and free verse are free from rhyme scheme, but whereas blank verse does have a consistent meter, usually iambic pentameter, that creates a rhythmic effect, free verse is free from both meter and rhyme. Or we may say free verse is free from both rhyme and rhythm. It is free from the limitations of verse poetry. Blank verse generally provides the poet more freedom than metrical compositions. There is a distinction between blank verse and free verse. While the names of these two poetic styles are quite similar, they are actually very different. Blank verse poems follow a set meter, but they do not rhyme. While any meter can be used in blank verse, the style is most commonly associated with iambic pentameter. So basically the thing is, in blank verse there's a rhythm but it is free from rhyme. But free verse is free from both rhyme and meter. Or we may say free verse is free from both rhyme and rhythm. Perhaps the most famous poem written in blank verse is Paradise Lost, which was published in 1667 by John Milton. It is an epic work, written entirely in unrhymed iambic pentameter. Miltonic blank verse was widely imitated in the 18th century by such poets as James Thomson in his The Seasons and William Cowper in The Task, whereas free verse was popularized by the famous American poet Walt Whitman in his Leaves of Grass. Romantic English poets such as William Wordsworth, P.B. Shelley, and John Keats used blank verse as a major form. Shortly afterwards, Alfred Lord Tennyson became particularly devoted to blank verse, using it, for example, in his long narrative poem The Princess, as well as for one of his most famous poems, Ulysses. Among the American poets, Hart Crane and Wallace Stevens are notable for using blank verse in extended compositions at a time when many other poets were using free verse. As we know, the same person who invented the Shakespearean sonnet also invented the blank verse. Yes, it is right. It was the 16th century poet named Henry Howard or Earl of Surrey. It was Surrey who adopted the Italian sonnet form, devising the rhyme scheme that would later be used and named after William Shakespeare. And it was Surrey who first pioneered the use of unrhymed iambic pentameter, more commonly known as blank verse. And not to be confused with free verse, which is also unrhymed but which doesn't have a regular meter either. Here are some famous examples of blank verse poems. John Milton's Paradise Lost, William Wordsworth's Tintern Abbey, Elizabeth Barrett Browning's Aurora Leigh, Lord Tennyson's Ulysses, Robert Browning's Fra Lippo Lippi, W.B. Yeats's The Second Coming.